this, and
not Dharma, but
not Dharma, that's right. Okay, that's what he's thinking. When he's thinking mindfulness, he's thinking this is a way to bring Dharma to the world without necessarily bringing Buddhism or Asian culture. But in terms of how he languages the definition, he'll often say, and you'll often hear people say, something like present-centered, non-judgmental awareness. So my response to that is that that's a fine definition for the general public because it sort of gives people an idea of what it's about. And they sort of think they understand it by hearing that and say, oh, okay, present-centered, non-judgmental awareness. So that's good for the general purpose of reaching the general public, I think. However, there are two possible problems with that definition that are small problems, and then there's one problem that I think is a bigger problem. Yeah. So the two small problems are not really problems. They're just, if you use that definition, present-centered, non-judgmental awareness, you have to be able to answer two questions that people are likely to ask or challenge you with or be confused about. And what do you think those two questions are? Okay, listen to the languaging itself, present-centered, non-judgmental awareness. So where are people, and I'm saying that's an okay definition, but where are people either going to be confused or likely to challenge you with that definition? What do you think?
presence-centered.
Well, first of all, present-centered. So does that mean that, by definition, if I'm thinking about the past or thinking about the future, I am not being mindful? Well, we know that's not the case.
Especially from the perspective of sati, which is memory.
Yeah, sati means memory, and especially from the case that, well, we could just go on and on.
Yeah.
I mean, Buddhist scholars get very upset with John's definition. Buddhist scholars. Now, actually, I was trained to be a Buddhist scholar, but I'm not upset by his definition. In fact, I think it's good, because my goals are practical. My goals are to help people, and from a practical point of view, it's fine. Buddhist scholars will give you a billion quibbles about that definition, which of course I understand, but to me that's trivial. However, a little more substantive is, you might be giving people the notion that the goal is not to be thinking about the past or thinking about the future, and as soon as you're doing that, you're no longer mindful. So the answer to that objection or that question is, well, when does your thought about the past or future arise? It arises in the present moment. And if in the present moment you know you're thinking about the past or the future, you're still mindful. So that takes care of that sort of problem with that definition. The other problem is non-judgmental. Does that mean, oh, then as soon as I'm judging, I'm no longer mindful? So then now I'm having judgments about judging. So that seems to be sort of logically problematic. That also, this is not a substantive problem now. You just have to explain to people that you could be non-judgmental, but then if you find yourself being judgmental, be non-judgmental with that. That's a sort of second-order equanimity. So you can deal with these problems relatively easily by simply amplifying the definition. More substantial from my point of view is this definition is rather difficult to operationalize. And I do believe in operationalizing. That means coming up with a procedure to measure something. That's what this means in science. And historically, you can look it up on the Wikipedia where the notion of operationalizability comes from. It actually comes from physics, specifically special relativity, actually general relativity, I guess. You know, how do we define time? Okay, how do we define space? Well, we have to have well, it turns out the only way to do it is operational. What time is what a clock measures. That's okay. That's what the